It takes the right skills and the right innovation to design and manage meaningful print marketing solutions. Welcome to Podcast from the Printerverse, where we explore all facets of print and marketing that create stellar communications and sales opportunities for business success. I'm your host, Deborah Corn, the intergalactic ambassador to the Printerverse. Thanks for tuning in. Listen long and prosper. Hey everybody, it is Deborah Corn, your intergalactic ambassador. Welcome to Podcast from the Printerverse. We have a guest today who I've known for quite some time. Paul Nicholson is a video, digital, print, and global advertising production executive with a track record of leveraging emerging technology for strategic cost reduction and process implementation. He's also a DEI advocate, former chairman of the Advertising Production Club of New York, and currently serves as an advisory member for the club, along with me. Paul, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deborah. This is great. What a thrill. This is up on my podcast list, Joe Rogan, and then Deborah Corn right there, man. So I'm here. I've arrived.
Excellent. Well, we could debate that order of importance at another time. But look, I just scratched the surface of all that you are, which to me is Mr. Fantastic. So can you tell everybody how you got to where you are? And it has been a storied career.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been quite the journey. It's really fun to look back now at this point, having been in this business for so long, and just kind of look back at like, how did this happen? How did I get here? How did this, all the people, all the companies, all the conversations and whatnot to get to where I am. And, you know, not that it's any great height per se. I just mean like a life's journey, right? Like we all have a story, and it's really interesting to think about.
We do, but don't be so humble because you didn't mention the last position that you had. We're going to get there, but it is pretty high up there.
Thanks. Yeah, for the past 25 years, we'll start at the end, sort of. For the past 25 years, I've been the Senior Vice President of Production and Technology for Showtime Networks, part of the Paramount Global set of brands. And that was just an unbelievable 25 years of producing incredible advertising, marketing, direct mail, video, print, and digital campaigns across the globe for, you know, iconic shows like Dexter, Homeland, Weeds, Yellowjackets most recently. So just like an incredibly fun environment, an amazing group of people to work with, and that team that I had the opportunity to build there and collaborate with for all these years. So, you know, I owe a great debt of gratitude to them, of course, for a lot of my own success, but it's really been just an awesome place to be for the last number of years. But going back, what's kind of interesting and unique about my story is that I actually didn't go to college or anything related to what I do. And that's an interesting story for young people today, right? You don't have to have it all figured out the moment you sign up for college. I started out as a musician. I was a saxophone player, believe it or not. And in high school, I was an all-state #1 saxophone player of New York State.
Trombone here.
Trombone. All right, we got to start a band. And I sort of didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but music was a big thing and a big part of it. And my family was all in music. And so I decided to go to college to learn how to play the saxophone better. And ultimately, as a fallback, maybe education, maybe a high school music teacher or something to that effect. But, you know, really, you want to sort of quote unquote make it in the business and be a really successful musician. And I was going to school and I got a bit burnt out on it. I was playing for 12, 14 hours a day, literally practicing my whole life, and realized at some point when I got to a certain age that you were either going to connect with the next Taylor Swift and make it as a huge music star, or you were going to be a starving musician. And I didn't have the passion to sort of live in my car for the love of music. I wanted to have success with music and be, you know, famous, quote unquote. And so I was kind of a little bit misguided in that way. So, you know, I decided to bail on music school, and then I went to audio engineering and recording school because I was sort of related to music, but in the digitization of the music business at the time, I decided to get into sort of running recording studios and editing audio and doing some mixing and producing. And I had some success there, had a lot of really cool bands. I started my own recording studio for a while up in my attic where I had musicians coming and going and doing some fun stuff. I was also DJing at the time, believe it or not. I was in the nightclubs during the week and I was doing corporate events and in local
Wait,
parties.
what was your DJ name? I need to know.
Oh, that'll never be revealed.
Oh, come on.
No, top secret.
Okay.
That goes to my coffin. No, it really wasn't that much fun. So, DJing and making some money, doing my audio mixing and recording with them, but kind of realized it's sort of the same thing at a certain point. You either connect with somebody who makes it and breaks it, like a Justin Bieber or a Van Halen or whatever your Pink Floyd, whatever your music interests lend themselves to. And again, wasn't willing to sort of live in my car for the love of the music. And so what was really cool is that while I was recording these bands, I started getting into also designing their CD covers and doing the graphic design around that format. And so I found myself staying up to 4 a.m, 2 a.m, whatever it might be every day after sessions, spending all this time learning how to use Quark Express and Photoshop and Illustrator and all of these tools that were just kind of coming out at the time. We're going back now a number of years. And so I really felt like I found this passion for graphic design and graphics in general and just figuring it out on the computer, if you will. And so I saw a little ad one day in a local sort of penny saver that said Mac Artist Wanted. And it was a job at a local sort of newspaper house, a very small sort of newspaper house on Long Island that was advertising for a job. It was a $7 an hour job, but it was to operate and do sort of editorial design for the newspaper family. And so I went in and I had an interview with this woman. And first question she asked me after introductions was, "Let me see your portfolio." And I said, "What's a portfolio?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't know that was even a thing. And so I said, "I don't have a portfolio. I don't even know what that is." And she said, "Okay, well, thanks, but no thanks. I really need somebody with some experience and blah, blah, blah." So sent me on my way. So I went home and I was kind of like intrigued by this. I started like doing some research around what portfolios were and what they needed to have in them and stuff like that. And then I went out to the store and bought a Rolling Stone magazine. And I literally measured ads in that magazine with a ruler. And then I started to try to recreate them in Quark Express. I didn't really have total chops back then. I was still learning. So I didn't do a great job with it, but I nonetheless put together some things, printed them out on my little laser printer at home, went back to the interviewee and said, "Here's my portfolio." And she said, "Not so much. This is not very good. This is amateur hour and, ultimately not what we're really looking for." So rejection number 2. So I said to her, "Listen, I'd love to just come in and hang around, and watch what you guys do so I could learn. You don't have to pay me. Just let me come in." She said no. I tried again. She said no again. We're up to the 4th rejection. Finally said, "Well, I'm going to call you anyway. Every once in a while, I'm going to give you a call and I'm going to see if you could let me come in and hang out or if you need some help or whatever. I'm just going to try to stay in touch with you." And she was just kind of basically pushing me out the door, "Get away from me." But nonetheless, I proceeded to call her every day. Every single morning at 10 a.m., I called her and I said, "Good morning, I'm having my coffee." And she would have her coffee. "Do you need any help today?" And she'd be like, "No, I don't need any help." And this went on and on and on for weeks, really. And it became kind of a funny thing. It was it's kind of like networking 101, right? Like back before we had any of these things like LinkedIn. This was
Seriously, you were a pioneer with this procedure you developed.
The actual telephone, right? So anyway, one day, as luck would have it, a bunch of people had called in sick. She said, "I really could use some help today, believe it or not." I was like, "I am there." I literally jumped right in my car, drove immediately there, and wound up working with her. It was kind of just the two of us for about 14 hours straight. It was issue day. It was printing day for the newspaper. These were weekly newspapers. And she needed me to sit there with an X-Acto knife. I did nothing on the computer, but I just basically sat there doing some arts and crafts, really, and running things through a wax machine and pasting them up on flats like our old school days, right? But we hit it off. We listened to some music. We talked. The end of the night, I said, "Are you sure? Can I please just kind of come in and hang around?" I said, "Listen, let me work for 2 weeks. Just come in. You don't have to pay me. But if after those 2 weeks you like me, then pay me and hire me," right? Basically, if you don't, I wash my hands. I'll never bother you again. I'll go away. So after 2 weeks, she ultimately liked me. I proved myself. And she gave me the job, paid me for the $7 an hour that she owed me. And then 4 months later, I got promoted to be her boss.
Wow.
Yeah.
Print Media Center provides printspiration and resources to our vast network of print and marketing professionals. Whether you are an industry supplier, print service provider, print customer, or consultant, we have you covered. With topical sales and marketing content, event support and coverage, these podcasts, and an array of community-lifting initiatives. We also work with printers, suppliers, and industry organizations, helping them to create meaningful relationships with customers and achieve success with their sales, social media, and content marketing endeavors. Visit printmediacenter.com and connect with the Printerverse. Print long and prosper.
Yeah, so she didn't really love that and sort of made her way out of the company at some point when that was convenient for her on a personal level, I guess. And so we worked together for a little while, but ultimately it wasn't really that, she was a wonderful person, by the way, and very talented. But I think I was kind of coming in at that right time where technology was coming into the printing business. And I rode that wave as one of sort of the early adopters, not the earliest, but sort of one of the early ones. And just sort of took advantage of that. And but more importantly, the passion that I had for it really was the reason for the success, right? I would go home and I would read book after book after book that I could get my hands on. Again, not a lot of internet out there at this moment back in the 90s. And so I was like just trying to learn everything I could possibly learn about these applications and the graphic design and all of that. So just really took to it. One of the people that I'd worked with there at the newspaper, another editorial designer, had then left and got a job at an ad agency in Manhattan called Franklin Spear, which was a very prominent book publishing advertising company at the time. And he had called me up a couple of months after he left and said they're looking for more people. And so that I made my way there, wound up getting that job and doing some really cool, mostly black and white actually at the time, but very high volume. And he and I really sort of built that place from a technology standpoint from the ground up. And we literally learned everything. We were crawling around on the floor trying to connect wires for networking and trying to figure it out. We put in the company's first email system, which was really cool. Remember CC Mail and Lotus Notes and all those really early applications. That was so awful, really. So we had a lot of fun sort of building that place. And then eventually a gentleman by the name of Len Foji came. He was at Gray.
I know that name.
Yeah, you probably know Len. Len's been around for a long time. He's kind of a real mentor of mine, but really an industry titan, if you will, in the advertising space. And he was president of Gray. I think it was Gray Entertainment at the time. And then he eventually came to Spear to run Franklin Spear as the president. He and I hit it off. He eventually got wooed to Showtime. And then...
Oh, that's how I know him. When I worked at Showtime, he worked at Showtime too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Eventually came to Showtime. Then he essentially brought me over there because he was really interested in building an in-house creative department and production department. And so he wanted me to do that for him. So it was a great opportunity. Couldn't pass that up. And that's how I wound up at Showtime. So it's been quite the interesting ride.
That is such an amazing story. I didn't know half of what you just shared about yourself, but I do want to say this. As a band geek myself, you can tell so much about somebody by the instrument they play. So you were saxophone, tenor sax, alto sax, which one?
I played all of them. Most recently I had an original rock band that we played with. I was an alto because that's the screaming high notes. Right?
Of course. So this is my assessment of your saxophone playing, which makes total sense. Saxophones, sometimes you gotta step up there and take the solo. You gotta do it, But a saxophone, unlike a trumpet player, plays within people, plays within the music. It's not leading the melody. Right. It's playing within. So it is highly about listening and responding and knowing where your moment is to shine. And I think that completely describes you. Where I was a trombone player, which means that I held it down. I held it down so everybody else could do what they needed to do. I remained steady and just the boom, 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 just that driving force, right? It
Right.
makes total sense. And we all know drummers, how they are, but very interesting.
You know what was also really interesting, actually, as part of this is just like both of us were musicians. So many people in this business are musicians, right? Like more in my mind, more than any other. You obviously are responding to the creative outlet that this business gives you as music does, right? So there's that relationship. But I also think that there's a logic to the way music works that
Yeah,
lends itself to production and printing and
I
graphic
agree.
design, right?
There's a framework that you need to stay within, but within that framework, you still have the ability to improvise as long as you don't mess everybody up in the process. As
Right.
long as you stay within that time frame or, the time signature or whatever else, the key, all the established rules. You can play the saxophone, you could do solos all day long. Just don't mess up the bass player and come in the wrong place, or anything like that. The other thing I wanted to echo is that I also early on worked at an agency called Stein Rogan and Partners, and it was one of the first interactive quote unquote agencies out there. And all the print people, they were like, they put us in a conference room. They're like, "This is a website." We were like, "What? What is that?" This is a banner ad. Your life is going to become this right now. You need to learn all about it. But being at that moment in time and enabling myself to be able to call it an integrated producer, print producer, production person, honestly, it propelled me the next 5 years. Certainly, I freelanced more of my career than I didn't, just because I didn't want to get involved. I just kind of wanted the money to get out of there because it's crazy. But I would get jobs before other people because I had that dual knowledge. So it's super important. Okay, I want to move to really focusing on this technology because you do have a very unique set of skills that you can talk IT and understand what you're talking about, not just, is your computer on, sir? Like you're way beyond that. Where did you start on your emerging technology journey? I mean, obviously you said you implemented email, so that was way, way along, but closer to now, what are the types of things you were looking at? How did you assess them and how did you implement them, especially with creatives?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, right? Getting creative people to use a lot of technologies is always a challenge. I think early on, again, I was so intrigued by this sort of digitization of this business and graphic design and using those early tools and the early computers, right? The Macintosh SEs with 2 megabytes of RAM and those tiny little screens and all of those early days applications. I just, always just like sort of eternally curious about technology in general. And also just, I am not one to sit still. My clock is going all the time. And anybody that's ever worked for me will tell you that I am constantly pushing them to innovate. What are you doing now? What are you doing next? Right? Like, let's not just do the work and go home for the day. I'm always like, how can we do the work better? How can we do it faster? How can we do it more of it? Right? And just sort of naturally, my clock dictates that. And so I've always looked for any ways that we can improve things. Sometimes that's just straight up business process, right? That's just figuring out structure of your team and how to streamline things from that standpoint. But so often, obviously, these days it's technology and it's automations and things like that. So, very early when I was at Showtime, I was really only running building first, but then running the sort of print studio, or what we think of as the traditional print studio, like retouchers, mechanical artists, that sort of thing, print buyers. And all of the files were stored on zip disks and they were all in different drawers around the place. And like nobody knew where they were except like one person. And if she ever got hit by a bus, oh my God, what are we going to do? So the first thing was, let's put all this stuff on a server. Let's buy a server, and then how can we then share that server? Then how can we work off of that server as opposed to having to copy files to a local machine and spend that time, right? And there were all kinds of things around the company, like drawers full of CD-ROMs with photos on them. So you'd have to literally get up, walk down the hall, go through find the disc that you need out of hundreds of them from every show and every day of shooting photography and whatnot. Lift that CD out, walk back to your desk, put it in, and then find the photos you want. Now, if somebody else needs that disc, they go over to the drawer. The disc isn't there because it's on your desk. And you would imagine people are lazy. They don't put things back. Next thing you know, it's weeks and weeks. Where the heck is that disc for Weeds or Queer as Folk or Nurse Jackie, one of those earlier shows? So again, server, we put in a big SAN system. It was the very first of its kind. There were articles written about it. That's how kind of innovative it was at the time, because no one was really doing this, so that we could work off of one server. And then I put in the company's first digital asset management system to house all of those CD-ROMs of images. And so now you could just sit at your desk and everybody had access to stuff 24 hours a day, even from home. And you could download stuff and upload stuff and keep track of versions. So those were what we talk about then as emerging technologies, right? Today, it's more things like video MAM systems or media asset management systems, where you're editing video proxies in the cloud. So you're not having to move these gigantic video files of full episodes or movies to and from your house or your office or your edit room, wherever you might be working. You now have access via the cloud. Again, innovative technology there, the cloud, right? And you're editing off of these low-res proxy files, and then essentially hitting a couple of buttons, and then the computer makes the high-res version, or the cloud makes the high-res version, depending on how you've configured it. And so those were some of the later emerging technologies. And then, of course, we have AI, which is the big buzzword. No podcast is relevant anymore unless we say AI, so we've checked that box. But AI is a part of all of these tools that I implemented at Showtime now. So you can auto create versions of things, because that's a lot of what we all do for a living, is actually make one thing and then make thousands of versions of that one thing that we made, right? Certainly a lot in the media streaming business that happens. And so, how can we automate that? Well, we can use things like AI to make those versions, rather than pay some very high-priced editor an hourly rate to make each one by hand, or burden the creative department with this kind of like more administrative-like task to create the vertical video and the square video and the horizontal video for the different social media platforms and whatnot. No need for them to be involved in that. So, you find different ways of leveraging these emerging technologies to just kind of keep up. And I just always prided myself and my team on the fact that we were always looking for what's next, never settling into anything we were using. We were always trying to innovate.
When I was at Showtime, Sandy Torres implemented FileMaker Pro. It was the first time there was a production management system there. You probably inherited that since you came in right after that started. So yeah, I remember I was like, what? You can see where everything is in one place, and there's a status report. You enter and you just put dates in and it makes a schedule. I mean, it was like, what? Of course, we couldn't get the creatives to use it, which was a whole other thing, but it made it very simple for the production department. When we met, it was actually because you were the chairman of the Advertising Production Club of New York, and you were putting together a print innovations event. And I always know you as someone who has been looking forward as far as printing goes as well. And Showtime does a lot of printing. I mean, when I was there, it was all printing. There was really no digital asset. Well, there were, but it was like the broadcast team did that. It was no little videos online or anything like that. It was, we were doing ads and a lot of promotional materials. We did a ton of those, a lot of outdoor. I don't know, but if you know this, but at one time, Showtime made the world's largest billboard. We wrapped the Port Authority. So I was part of that, which was really cool. But we did a ton of printing. So I want to just focus on that for a little bit. How were you learning about new technology out in the marketplace, and how were you assessing it as whether or not it was relevant at this moment in time to the projects that you were working on?
Yeah. So, in specifically related to printing, right? And print in general. Yeah. Showtime, as you said, that was the days that you were there. Obviously we crossed paths very briefly at Showtime. So those were all the same time that I was kind of coming into it. And so my first order of business, as I said earlier, was just kind of like getting the digital studio up and running and figuring that all out. The next order of business was to take over all of the print production. And the main focus of that department in general was direct mail, because we did so much direct mail. There was so much printing happening and shipping of those pallets of mail pieces, just hundreds of millions of pieces a year, really. We would print these essentially shells. We would come up with the creative, create these mail pieces, and then offer them to the affiliates, cable companies, if you will, and have them sort of put their own customized black plate on it. We would do that for them, but they would give us that information. We would typeset it, and then we would actually print out the number of pieces and deliver them to them. They would handle the mailing.
I just want to interject for 1 second and say that I totally forgot about that, but you're right. We used to make the schedule of all the new programming that was on Showtime that month, and it used to go in everyone's cable bill. So everyone who subscribed got to one. You're right. I'm having a little PTSD now about all that direct mail. I did a lot of stuff on the boxing too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we would create these shells, these creative pieces that left room for their black plate. And we would create dozens of variations for them because everybody wanted something a little different or wanted to sell one type of show versus another. But these were primarily and really exclusively at first Showtime promotions. Later, that changed because the cable companies started selling internet and phone service, and then they wanted to have those things incorporated. And then the whole table shifted where that was their primary message, and the Showtime thing became a little box on the piece. And so then all of that direct mail had gone away. But we had some really incredible partnerships with our vendors back then, big direct mail printers that we used that really came up with some very innovative ways of creating those shells, printing on demand, variable data. We started to really implement some of those at the time emerging technologies in print.
You mean digital printing?
Right.
Pretty much. What about wide format technology? Were you still doing the outdoor billboards, or did they all go Times Square used to be filled with them, or did you go electronic on those?
Yeah, so we really pushed the outdoor companies at the time, one of which was obviously owned by CBS, a sister company. And so we were a critical part, my team really, and my great print production people, Linda Monteleone and others, Peter Oppenheim, et cetera. And they really helped to push the industry forward because we were doing so much outdoor that we wanted to create more digital opportunities. And that was very, obviously the printing companies were resistant to that, obviously, but the outdoor companies were not, because they could then just change out creative or sell a rotational board and these types of things. And so we really wanted some key areas to have those digital boards. And so we were successful in getting them to do that. We continue to print tons of outdoor. In fact, now Showtime is really primarily outdoor printing as compared to any other type of printing. They've really gone ultimately to a very robust digital promotional platform as opposed to physically printing much at all in terms of like offset. It's mostly outdoor and large format.
How much of a conversation has sustainability been in your world for the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years? And what do you think of the conversation moving forward? What is the impact?
Yeah, personally, sustainability means a great deal. That's very important to me. And there's a lot of things we need to do to improve in this industry, especially in the outdoor space and vinyl and whatnot, and the impact that has on the environment. The problem for companies, though, is that it's so expensive, right? It really ramps up the cost. And we just have not done enough to make it palatable for budgets in today's marketplace, okay? Budgets are getting tighter. Content velocity is going up. We need to create more of this stuff for less money. And the price to do something more sustainable is just counter to that. And so it's the first thing that you just say, forget it, and you take it off the list. Again, from a personal standpoint, it's super important. From a company standpoint, really everybody's interested in sustainability until they see that price tag and that invoice. And then they're like, maybe we can wait a little while.
Printspiration is streaming across the Printerverse on the Project Peacock Network. And our mission to provide education and resources for print customers, students, and printers around the world has never been more accessible. Watch what you want, when you want, where you want. It's free. Visit projectpeacock.tv to access original programming and replays from our online events. Learn about the Peacock partners and companies featured in our shows. Join our mailing list to learn about new episode premieres and series launches, and create a free account to make watch lists. Ready for your close-up? Get your Peacock show on air by visiting projectpeacock.tv and request your partnership proposal today. Peacock long and prosper. When it comes to marketing budgets, sometimes this is a point of contention with some people in the printing industry, and at least my personal experience of how life in the agency works. So there are people in the printing industry that believe if they could just get to the chief marketing officer and tell them people like to touch paper, people retain more information that when they touch paper. Look, we can print shiny stuff on paper. People like shiny stuff. That will make a chief marketing officer go, wow, let me take all that money that I have allocated for digital marketing and reassess that and put it back into print marketing because you just gave me a stat about how people love to touch paper. What is your experience with how all of that works and how someone like you, with all due respect, gets your marching orders on what you're supposed to produce? And do you ever, even in the role that you had, which was a major role, get to say, you know what, we actually should put some money in the print budget? Have you ever been able to do any of that?
I think the first problem is that the salesmen come and they say, yeah, people like to touch paper. And they use examples like that instead of real data that shows any kind of relevant, impact that it has on the market, right? Or any type of success that their customers have had by doing more printing in any kind of real tangible way with real KPIs, real data points and things of that sort. So many of these salesmen that call, right? And we all in these positions get calls. I mean, I would get dozens a day, even earlier days when there were a lot more printing companies. Now there's less printing companies, so you get less phone calls, thankfully. But you get a lot of phone calls still, and people are just basically saying, like, this is the equipment I have, this is where I'm located, people like to touch paper, these sort of very general things that don't matter to me, right? And my immediate answer is I have somebody that does that, right? It's a commodity. I mean, at this point, equipment is the least important thing in that conversation for me. I mean, if you're I don't know if there are even any more annual report printers or, more in that sort of healthcare sector or something where these government required printing thing, then maybe it matters more for those sort of hardcore people that need to fit certain things up on a press and whatnot, right? But for the most part, everybody has the same capabilities now, right? And there's a lot less printers, so they've merged and equipment is merged over time. What they really need to be doing is bringing data with them, and they need to talk about how they can leverage your data in the printing, and they need to understand what your business needs are and what you're trying to do with your marketing. They don't spend any time, in my experience, coming with real solutions for my business and how I'm going to move the needle and get more subscribers or get more customers or increase sales or whatever it is that I'm trying to do in my business. So, and again, it goes back to emerging technologies, right? These printers have the ability to hire people in their company that really can leverage emerging technologies along with the printing component. And so you've got some printers that are doing interesting things, but man, it feels so slow to progress where, there are some that are using data points, and some of the data points are old data points like zip codes. And some of the data points are new data points like geotagging on your phone and using the notification system of an iPhone to alert you that you're about to get a direct mail piece in your mailbox today with a deal from Verizon or a deal from Coca-Cola or whatever it is. So that you get this bing on your phone, you look at it, you're like, oh, now I'm expecting the mail piece, now I'm looking for the mail piece, as opposed to just grabbing all the direct mail and throwing it in the trash and not even looking at it, right? So there's creative ways, I think, for them to use technology, but also creative ways for them to use their business know-how to tell me why I need to use them, right? Some of that needs to be direct. Some of that needs to be them calling me to tell me that they did the research on my company and they saw X in the market and they want to know why we did that, or right. Some of that's that direct relationship stuff where they call you. And some of it is just them having a presence out there on things like LinkedIn and other social media platforms, showcasing some of these successes, talking about their customers, the impact that their technology had on their customer, how their customer increased sales by X by running this program of print combined with video, right? They need to make content. They need to be their own kind of influencers, if you will, and say, create videos showing how this project made its way through their plant, interview the customer to talk about the success, right? There's all this extra stuff that takes work, doesn't take a lot of money though, to show that you're an expert and that you can offer me real added value by me doing business with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point. Are you getting packages from printers with samples anymore? Letters, introduction? Hey, to your point, we've analyzed what Hulu, HBO, and Netflix is doing, and here is some ways that you can stand out in the mailbox.
No, I don't get nothing. Nothing comes to me with that sort of strategy behind it or real strategic thinking behind it, right? I might get just a kit of stuff. Hey, here's our kit, right? And I immediately throw those in the garbage. So don't waste your money, printers, if you're listening, because no one is looking at that unless it's like a real wow piece. And more than likely, they're not sending those because those are more expensive typically. And so they're not just blanket sending those out. But what I used to say when a printer would come in and sit in front of me or on the phone, I would say, send me interesting things. I have nothing for you right now today. This phone call is not going to get you a job or a bid even, right? A bid opportunity. I would say, send me interesting things though. Keep in touch with me by every once in a while, sending me a sample that isn't just like a well-printed sample. I know you can print good. Everybody can print good. But show me something that is highly creative, even in just like it's a simple print job, but the agency that did it came up with this wild creative idea that might inspire me, right? And I know now that I got that from you, so I'm thinking about you related to their good work, right? Show me something that is a wow piece with incredibly innovative technology used to do it, right? Show me something that has real data around the success of the campaign. Don't just send me a kit of samples that like you can print letterhead and you can print mail and look at the 4 colors and look, it's got to be a real wow piece because it initiates conversation and that initiates relationship and helps you build a relationship with somebody because now I like the way you think. You've sent me 2 or 3 of these things in the what. Now I know your eye is good and that you can add value to my department and you can be a resource for us. Not just somebody who just wants a bid. I know your bid is going to be the lowest, right? That's the other joke. They always want an opportunity to bid. And then, of course, the bid comes in like 30% less than anybody because they're, right, the classic.
The first time. Right, exactly. Right. You're so correct. I remember the first time I received a sample of just a printer sent it and said, hey, I thought this was cool. I wanted to send it to you. And now it seems like a very simple thing, but at the time, it was a round piece that opened up so that it almost looked like a flower. When it was a square piece, but the 4 flaps were round. And when you closed it, they interlocked with each other. And if I can tell you, we all looked at it like it was a miracle. And we worked with that printer because they had the template. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. I still had to get my 3 bids, but there was no comparison because someone already went through the months of creating the die and making sure they knew which flat had to be like a 16th of an inch shorter on one side. I mean, people don't realize that everything, or you learn the hard way like I do, designing something for a 5x7 envelope, 5x7 instead of leaving it a little room. The first time you do that, the printer's like, no, it's got to fit inside the envelope. So yeah, it's such a great point. I call it Printspiration. Just keep sending Printspiration to people. And printers, listen to Paul, listen to me. we keep drawers full of this stuff and we wait to whip it out for the right time, or we remember that one time that we saw something really cool. We know it's in that drawer, and now this is the perfect moment in time to whip it out and show everybody and say, we can do this or we can modify it in some way. But either way, we've got an idea that we haven't done before or that we can retool for another purpose. I think it's super important. Any final words on that?
It is incredible. We had drawers full, and I had an amazing print production person that worked for me at Showtime named Judy Salmon. I know you know Judy.
Judy, rest in peace, my friend.
Rest in peace, Judy. And she took over half the floor of file cabinets because if you sent her something that was really beautiful or interesting, man, she kept that for life. She brought with her boxes of this stuff from previous jobs when she came to me. I don't know. I think she started about 12 years ago working at Showtime, and then built an entire library of like printspiration, as you say. And that's an incredibly valuable tool for the creative department to look at, and we would sort of showcase that stuff. We'd break out like 6 or 7 pieces this week for no apparent reason, but just put stuff out so that while people walk down the hall, they might get inspired to do something or, look at something, and it might influence another project, in some way.
That's amazing. Speaking of influence, you specifically point out that you are a DEI advocate in your profile, which I respect and thank you for. You developed something called the Content for Change Academy. Can you tell everybody what that is?
Yeah, sure. That's something I developed exclusively at Paramount, but Paramount Global has a project essentially called the Content for Change Academy, and it's really part of a much larger DEI initiative. But this one was very specifically near and dear to my heart, and I sort of pitched for the original concept. Right? So there's a real lack of young people coming into this business, whether it be print or video production, coming from diverse communities. And I would put out job applications for production assistant level types of jobs. And I really would get a lot of resumes. I mean, I could post a job description and in a week, I'd have 2,000 resumes. And there would be, less than 5% coming from underserved communities. And so that really mattered to me. I really wanted to create at Showtime, and it's always been a mission of mine to have a very diverse department in general. And and I mean diverse. Diversity for me isn't about skin color. It's about a whole range of things. It's even just diversity in thought and ideas. But it's very important to me nonetheless for all of those reasons. And I wanted to create something where we could kind of have almost an internship level type of program where we could get kids from underserved communities and get them ready so that they could apply for those entry-level jobs. Because there was this gap of kids that were actually ready and had the very, very basic even knowledge or skills to work in a corporation, to work in a department, to work for anybody but themselves or for anything but being a student. And so we created this Content for Change Academy program so that we would have a dozen or so kids come in, and there would be an actual curriculum where they would learn how to behave in an office, how to be in an office, how corporate structure works. We would teach them about the business of television streaming so that they could understand how the company functioned and what was important to the company. And then we would take them through kind of a mentorship with a creative director or a production line producer or something like that, depending on what their interests were, so that they could sort of shadow a little bit and just get comfortable so that they could be a good performer in an interview for these entry-level jobs. So we started doing that, and it's just reaped incredible benefits. We partnered with a company called ReelWorks, REEL, like video ReelWorks, and they're an amazing organization. I encourage anybody to check them out. I believe it's reelworks.org. And this is their whole mission, right? Serving underserved communities and helping them to get these talented filmmakers and editors and producers into companies and into jobs and ultimately into their dream careers. And so we had great success with that. I have an amazing PA program led by a woman named Kim Gallagher at Showtime who's there and still operates this team. And we have an 18-month program. So it's almost a little bit like the NBC Page program, where it's a defined period of time that these kids come in And now these Content for Change Academy kids are applying for those and getting those jobs. And we have an incredibly diverse team now. And they come in and they work for 18 months. So the clock is ticking on them. So that keeps a little bit of fire under their belly or in their belly so that they keep active and do great work and really try to continue to figure out what they want to do next, because this is a stepping stone level job. And it keeps us fresh with talent coming in constantly around Showtime. And so many of our PAs over the years, God, we started the PA program 20 years ago. The Content for Change Academy is only a couple of years old. But so many of our PAs have turned into some of my absolute best editors in my career at Showtime. Some of our highest level creative directors at Showtime came out of that PA program. And so many very senior level people in the production department that made to director level or even vice president of Showtime started in that PA program. It's just such a great place to start because it's really from the ground up and you really get to be a resource for a lot of very senior level people right in the beginning and you get exposure to that. So the Content for Change Academy, just a huge success. And I'm really excited that Paramount is continuing it. And they have a lot of great people working on it there. And it's really across all the brands now. So it's been nice to be a part of that.
Like what you hear? Leave us a comment, click a few stars, share this episode, and please subscribe to the show. Are you interested in being a guest and sharing your information with our active and growing global audience? Podcasts are trending as a potent direct marketing and educational channel for brands and businesses who want to provide portable content for customers and consumers. Visit printmediacenter.com, click on podcasts, and request a partner package today. Share long and prosper. Anyone who's ever worked in advertising or an in-house advertising department at a corporation, which functions as itself, with itself, your own company as your client, which is a weird situation. Took me a little while to understand that the person down the hall was actually my client. But mergers and acquisitions happen and corporations make changes. And, recently Showtime merged into Paramount, not the other way around. So obviously there were some changes made there and you are no longer at Showtime. What are you looking for in the next chapter of Paul Nicholson?
Good question. I still want to try to figure out what I want to do with my life, actually. I'm just kidding. Look, at Showtime, I was managing a huge team. We had a really large team that I built from the ground up, the in-house team, as I mentioned earlier. It included things like campaign management, marketing operations, post-production, print production, all of our key art finishing, physical production shoots, photo shoots, whatnot, plus all of the technology that we use to do all of this work, the marketing tech stack, so to speak, including as I said, the company's MAM systems and DAM systems, project management systems. We did a whole bunch of custom software development, and I managed the facilities, kind of acting as a COO for the in-house agency. All of the physical office space was under my sort of watch as well, and all the technology in people's hands. So while all of that is certainly kept me and my team really busy, and I couldn't be more proud of it, it was also, so rewarding and exciting at the same time. And I'm not one to sit still. There's still so much more that I want to do, and I'm kind of trying to figure out in which direction I want to focus. I think I could make my way to a technology-driven company in a way that would be really effective because of my history and my desire there, and also a straight-up production role if it's at a senior level. My passions are managing I love managing and mentoring, and as I say, DEI, and so that I would love for that to be a part of it. I also think that I would like to kind of take other companies through the success that we had at Showtime with all of the process implementation and structure and tool set, and help them figure out how to make their lives more efficient and really drive financial efficiency and process efficiency. And I think I have a lot to offer.
I think you have a lot to offer in any of those roles, but if I was going to choose your job for you, that's what it would be. The last thing you said, you are a transformational person. You are a disruptor. You are in a position to be able to take an agency to the next level, which is where we're at right now, especially with the emerging technology in artificial intelligence, is very much going to affect the marketing world in ways that we're only tapping into right now. I don't know if you've seen these new QR codes that the AI is spitting out. My God, can you not imagine billboards on sides of buildings with these things? I mean, it's just incredible. Cool. But living in all of those worlds and understanding how to assess the technology and how to look for the next thing before it's a thing yet is something that I've always attributed to you. And I look forward to seeing what your next iteration is. Everything you need to connect with Paul is in the show notes. And I just want to thank you so much for your time, for your service to the industry, to the Advertising Production Club of New York, for pulling me in there, and for just being an all-around awesome guy who happens to play the saxophone too. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you so much. This was a real fun conversation, and let's keep it going.
Excellent. Until next time, everybody, print long and prosper. Thanks for listening to Podcasts from the Printerverse. Please subscribe, click some stars, and leave us a review. Connect with us through printmediacenter.com. We'd love to hear your feedback on our shows and topics that are of interest for future broadcasts. Until next time, thanks for joining us. Print long and prosper.